welcome to HIMSS
Thank you.
welcome to the Handelsblatt HIMSS Health Conference. This is our first one. We hope to have more in the future. So let's start off with a bit about digital transformation. We've had a lot of discussion yesterday and starting this morning about digital transformation in Germany,
Right.
getting EMRs and digitization going so that the patient has better outcomes. Tell us a bit about what Siemens cares about in that process.
Yeah, sure. So look, we firmly are committed to the digitalization aspect of it. In particular, when it comes to Germany, we see that there is significant effort that is required to bring Germany to a higher level. I mean, we have a very good standard of care in Germany, but if you compare us in international benchmarks to other countries, in particular the Nordics and so on, we realize is that there's a lot that we have to do. It has to do with the digital infrastructure that we have, it has to do with data sharing, and it has to do also with the application that we built on top. And that's where we realize, as one of the largest medtech players in the world, that we have also an obligation to bring more digital solutions into Germany.
So tell us a bit about clinical pathways. That's one of the key things you care about, I think.
Yeah, we do. So clinical pathways has to do with today's healthcare system is pretty much specialty focused, right? So you have a lot of silos in hospitals where you have radiology, you have your pathology, and then you have the specialties, but it's never patient oriented. And what we see is that many hospitals in Europe, but also in the United States, start to cut through those silos and really orient their pathways along the disease. So to give you an example, cancer. We know that cancer is, as we all know, is now one of the fastest growing diseases that we have. It has become a chronic disease, which is good news, but it's a very complex disease and it's a very long-term disease. So you need to have all the information available in order to make the right treatment. And the stakes are high. It's about survival rates, it's about all the costs that go into expensive chemotherapy and whether it works or not. And the complication that you have is that today, one, the data is not available in order to make the right treatment decisions. And second, that the data that is required to make the right judgment call in terms of the right treatment at the right time for every patient, which is precision medicine, it is very complex in the human brain to get more than, let's say, 5 to 10 critical variables together. So what we realized is that digitalization can help a lot. So digitalization can help to aggregate all the relevant information that is needed, and then can, better than a human brain, can really match the data against the human specifics of what is required in that very case, so that when you match it against the clinical guidelines, you can have the right treatment for the right patient. And we started this with something that we call the AI Pathway Companion. And the keyword here is companion. So what we want to do is we want to assist the physician, and we don't want to replace him. So we want to make the life easier. We want to reduce the burden of looking through all the different files in order to have the information available at the point of decision. And we want also to help the physician to feel more confident in their decisions.
So in this pathway, you're giving them the information they need, which maybe they wouldn't remember or haven't accessed to make a decision, but you're not telling them what decision to make. The AI pathway.
The AI Pathway Companion makes a recommendation suggestion based on the clinical guidelines.
Right. And so we're moving to the discussion of AI, which is a loaded discussion.
Yes.
AI scares people, and there's the black box and what's in the black box. How do you think about your AI business, and how do you help the doctors understand that it's there for them and it's good for them and it will help their patients' outcomes?
Sure. So first off, yes, you're right. There's a very human aspect to AI, and I think one of our jobs is to better explain how these algorithms work. Generally speaking, though, in order to increase the outcomes and the results of AI, what matters is the data set that you have, right? Because in the end, it really determines whether you are non-biased. And we've seen a lot of studies recently, as you know, that creates all kinds of sorts of issues. So you cannot go to, for example, in the US to the VA and then scan all the data out of the VA, because then you have a male bias in it. So you have to ensure that it's a very large and very diverse data set. And you have to make that transparent, in particular to regulators.
And how do you do that with GDPR?
We do this with GDPR mainly because we have a lot of research collaborations, trusted research collaborations with many leading institutions around the world, where we have done a lot of research over many, many years. So we can build on that in order to exchange anonymized data to make that work. In some cases, the data is then used in a central data repository in order to make that work. In some cases, although you bring the algorithm to the facilities in order to see whether there is a bias or not.
And the research comes from all over the world. Are you in Asia right now? Are you in, obviously you're in North America and you're in Europe?
Sure. Yes, we are in Asia. Of course, Siemens Healthineers is a global business.
Is there research in Asia that you're using for the AI?
Absolutely. Yeah. We have a very large center, in particular out of India and Bangalore, where we do a lot of experiments, in fact, and where we do a lot of data cleaning, data annotation, and so on. The major facility, though, where we do all the research and where we also have our supercomputers in Princeton, in New Jersey, in the US.
Yeah, I saw that picture of those supercomputers. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's a very impressive thing. It has 22 petaflops and it's increasing every time. And what's very, very interesting for us, we just recently surpassed 1 billion data points or the images that we have now in our data lake. So 1 billion images that we have in order to train our AI algorithms.
And each image is quite big itself.
That's right.
Yeah. So we saw some pictures yesterday in the presentation, the Siemens presentation, that were beautiful AI representations of an entire body being scanned and built up. That must really help triage diagnosis, and it must help the doctors figure out where to go if they're operating, et cetera.
Correct.
So where has that been rolled out? Where can you use this type of AI imaging?
Yeah, so it's a stepwise approach because also, as you know, regulatory bodies are different around the world. You asked earlier about China. Or Asia. China is very different than the rest of Asia, as you probably know. Yeah. So you need to have some very specific solutions to China. Apart from it, we have it rolled out in Europe. We are about to roll it out in the United States. We got FDA clearance.
Oh, fantastic. Well done.
And so in that regard, that's great. So we are collecting the great first feedbacks. And let me tell you, the feedback that we're getting is wonderful because it is really improving the value of healthcare. For one, radiologists need less time to make the same diagnosis. And second, it does improve the diagnostic confidence. And what we've seen is that in one study site, that in 14% of the cases, there were findings that the radiologists would not have captured. And they were relevant findings. So in 14% of the cases, in terms of incidental findings, you had to go back and actually add that, which is important information for the patient. So not only does it improve the efficiency, it also improves, of course, the quality and the outcomes.
So there's been a lot of talk about radiologists and young doctors deciding maybe not to go into radiology because there's less for them to do. How would you address that issue?
I think, to be honest, it's the opposite. I can understand the fear behind it, but as with everything, right now artificial intelligence is certainly overhyped in the sense that it can do everything. And what we slowly learn is what it can really do is repetitive tasks. And these are the things radiologists actually don't like. If they look at a chest X-ray, and they look at them very, very often, this is the least liked in radiology, simply because you have to do so many. If you can get a computer or an automated way with AI empowered to make this go away so that you can focus on the specialty cases that are really relevant and interesting, also for the radiologist, then I think this makes that field even more attractive.
In fact, yesterday we heard from one of the speakers in the morning that he said we're actually in the golden age of medicine now.
Correct.
And because of digitalization and AI, this is giving doctors even a more exciting opportunity to help patients. Correct. So in your rollout now, are you seeing it not only improving the speed and the diagnosis, but also the outcomes and the satisfaction of the doctors that they've been able to transform, or you've helped them transform their process, their work in a much better way?
So let's answer it that way, that it's early stage. The first early indications are very positive and promising. However, as I said, AI certainly has this hype where there's a lot of groundwork that is still required. I'll give you an example. Now you have all these AI algorithms, and now how is this information fed back into an EMR? And today, in many instances, you have it captured somewhere, but now you need to take this and you need to copy it, and then you have to put it into the report, and then it has to go into the EMR. This is laborsome. So they like the results. They like the way they are being supported and assisted, but they don't like the end-to-end automation of that process. So we will see a lot of more what we call workflow integration, and there's more work around that. But clearly, it is here to stay.
Yeah.
If you go to China, this is amazing what they do. They use AI quite a bit in daily routine.
Also, they have a big data set.
They do.
And they have no GDPR.
It's different, should we say.
Very different, like a none.
That's right.
In terms of radiology, are you taking your clinical pathway and going beyond radiology to other parts of medicine?
Absolutely. So precisely what I mentioned with the AI Pathway Companion. What the AI Pathway Companion is, it does collect the data from radiology, yes, from pathology, in particular as pathology is getting more digital, which is very, very interesting, from laboratory, from genetics, from patient history, and so on.
So you rolled it out quite a lot.
It does combine more than 150 variables and then combines it into one aggregated way.
I see. So that's amazing. So pathology as well. Wow.
Yes.
In terms of cancer treatment, then AI is going to be transformative.
That is the belief.
Yes.
And as I said, this is
Do you
early
believe
stage.
that?
I think it can significantly help to reduce the burden of I mean, on the one hand, the cost, and really improve the quality and the outcomes of it.
You're carefully positive.
Carefully, I'm the head of digital, so I'm very optimistic that this will work.
That's great, because obviously, if that works, and you generate better triage, better diagnosis, right? Then you have better outcomes. Speed again will improve. Costs will go down, and people will get more targeted treatments.
I mean, look, you mentioned the golden age, right? So the way, and I see it the same way, but I think we haven't seen the full benefit yet, because the first stage was, let's digitize everything, right? Which we did. So we implemented all these EMRs, and this was a major burden for all those healthcare systems. Now EMRs are commonly widespread. However, all the clinical information is not validly available. So now we start to build a layer on top of it in order to have that clinical information available. All this groundwork is almost completed. All what you need now to have is those applications that build on top of it to harness this power of information and knowledge. And I'm a firm believer that this is right about now.
But Germany is lagging a bit behind other countries that we see, the Nordic countries, for example, and others. What are your hopes for Germany, and where do you think the whole digital transformation will go? Because right now it's just getting started.
Yes. My hope is that we become a little bit less risk averse, and that is really that we start also to think in terms of risk benefit, and that there is tremendous benefit of having, for example, information that is being shared across a large population for research. I mean, obviously, the larger, as we said, the larger the data set, the higher the likelihood that I can have a targeted therapy for you individually, right? And today we feel uncomfortable with it. I think we need to have clear guidelines and regulations, exactly as that bill is intended to do. And I think it's going far enough. And GDPR, by far, is one of the most stringent ones that you have to adhere to. I think the guidelines are in place. It's now just a matter of to adhere to it and then putting this into practice.
Yeah. And it seems that GDPR has already influenced America, because any international company based in America has to, if they're doing business in Europe, has to go along with, adhere to GDPR. So it's quite a good thing to have in the world, protect people's data. Interestingly, someone yesterday, and I'd like to get your sense of this, someone yesterday said that since data was so important in driving transformation, AI development, better diagnoses, that doctors should talk to a patient. If the patient doesn't consent, give them the data. They should say to the patient, I can't really help you then, because I don't have the data I need. Which is quite an extreme comment, isn't it?
It is an extreme comment, but I mean, look, if you were my physician and you would ask me about how I feel, and if I don't disclose in all details of what has happened in my past episode, you could not provide the level of care, could you? Right? So it's about knowledge, it's about information exchange, and I don't think that people need to be punished, but I think it needs to be clear that the level of care will increase with the amount of transparency that it is, as far as this information is not being abused.
And many of the young people today are very comfortable giving people like Facebook and others their data.
Correct.
So you would think that their healthcare data would be really important to give to the doctors.
That is correct, in particular, and the keyword is to the doctors, right? So you need to be in control where you provide access to whom do you provide access to, and to whatnot.
And once empowered, they can make that decision. So last question, Peter. If you had a magic wand and you could fix one problem only in Germany, we're just focusing on Germany, I know your remit is quite international, but just in Germany, what healthcare problem would you want to fix with your magic wand?
So my magic wand would be that we connect the continuum of care.
That's a great one.
Yeah. So this idea of ambulatory care on the one hand and then the tertiary care on the other hand, and very often these are not linked to each other. So if you had a link, a seamless data flow between these, and then giving the patient access and control over his or her data, this would be it. And I think this can be done because there's examples even around Germany where in Austria we have done this. So it can be done.
And HIMSS can help people. I don't know if you know, but we have a maturity model, CCMM, which is a continuity of care model that helps connect the two. But anyway, that was a great question.
Great.
Thank you.